career and his presidency around three things: lower taxes, smaller government, strong defense. In doing so, he almost single-handedly resurrected and redefined the modern conservative movement. But he did much more than that. He resurrected and redefined America. If that sounds like an impressive feat, it was. And it's hard to imagine anyone other than Reagan who could have done it. Known by friend and foe alike as the great communicator, even Democrats conceded that no one could connect with the American people like Reagan. Whenever he went on TV, which was often, to promote a policy, he invariably swung the American people his way. When he explained something, it just made sense. Fittingly, it was a TV speech in 1964 entitled A Time for Choosing that launched his political career. He delivered it on behalf of Republican presidential candidate Barry Goldwater. Here's just one of his many memorable passages. No government ever voluntarily reduces itself in size. Actually, a government bureau is the nearest thing to eternal life we'll ever see on this earth. This was pure Reagan, a basic truth delivered with humor. Born in a small Midwestern town on February 6th.
So, all right, points to Scott Walker for at least doing something that conservatives often do not do when they quote the speech, which is mention who it was for. But it is maybe worth pausing a second to think about that election in 1964 between Goldwater and LBJ. And, you know, think about some of the particular government bureaus that that Goldwater was worried about that were being established in the early 60s. I mean, that's a little history quiz, you know, because anybody know like what stuff was just happening or had just happened, you know, when that 1964 election happened?
What was it? What was it like the fact that we gave black people rights?
I mean, that is a big piece, right? I mean, that's the Civil Rights Act, right? I mean, that was one of the first big things that LBJ did after the JFK assassination. And I mean, like, this is something that Goldwater was opposed to, and you know, he was already doing the "I'm not a racist," but you know, when he's opposed to it, not of course because he's opposed to integration, but because he didn't want to establish these like powerful government bureaucracies to force Southern businesses to desegregate.
Yeah, my second guess was going to be it's something to do with the Beatles, but that was a good guess too.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I just wanted to pause to note that we could get the rest of Governor Walker's video here.
1911, Reagan honed his communication skills as a radio announcer and then as an actor. He was a genuine Hollywood star and celebrity for over 2 decades before he got into politics. Tall, broad-shouldered, and handsome with a golden voice, he was well-respected and well-liked by his peers. He was also seen as a natural leader.
Tall,
From
sexy.
1947 to 52, he was president of the Screen Actors Guild, deftly guiding it through the blacklist era.
I want to stop it right there.
Yeah.
Encouraged by the positive.
Because I took a art history class, which was like the history of protest art, which was absolutely fantastic. And in 1947, there were paintings of Reagan eating babies, based on like how he was in the 40s, already like blacklisting communists, before HUAC and all that stuff started. So he was a monster back then, and ruining people's careers, including raping somebody at that time, if I remember correctly, which does not get mentioned.
Yeah, I can't speak on that, but come on. I mean, it was Ronald Reagan that inspired me to get involved with labor in the first place. Great labor leader, Ronald Reagan. It's a bit. I mean, I guess
Jake's an air traffic controller when he's
but when you dig into what he was actually doing, it makes more sense. But it is kind of funny that that's touted as like what his first real leadership role. It's strange.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the history of Reagan's leadership that much, but yeah, like you said, deft is an interesting, adjective to like summarize it all as.
Yeah, I mean, I do know enough from the Rick Perlstein books mostly to know that what he was, he was on the, definitely the militantly anti-communist end of these battles
Right.
within actors unionism in the late 40s, and and really, I mean, he was, what that ultimately ended up meaning was on the pro boss end, right? That they because they were breaking the actual militant actors union that was led by communists in the 40s, and even though he didn't, and he got like increasingly absolutist about stamping out the communist influence, and that's what he was really there for. And when the Hollywood blacklist started, I believe actually, I mean, I think it's at least rumored that's no, I actually think this is just the thing, right? I mean, I don't think this rumor that he first met Nancy, I mean, he'd already gotten divorced after his first marriage, but like that he'd first met Nancy because she was looking for help getting her name off of a blacklist.
Well,
So,
I mean, she was blowing her way through that list. People who can get her off that blacklist.
no comment.
Yeah, I remember when I first heard that comment, I was like 20, 21, like interning on some podcast, and these record execs were talking about Nancy and her blowjobs, and I was like, blew my mind, no pun intended. I was like, that is funny.
She was the goat when it came to blowjobs.
Yeah, but I guess like it was just such a crazy idea to me. No, I know it's pop meme before meme, right? All right, we can go back.
In response to his "A Time for Choosing" speech, Reagan decided to run for governor of California. He won easily. The victory immediately established him as a major figure in the Republican Party. By 1980, he was their overwhelming choice for president. That year, he soundly defeated President Jimmy Carter. The incumbent lost because his pessimistic approach to problem solving mirrored the justifiably sour mood of the country. The economy was going nowhere, caught in the double grip of inflation and stagnation. In contrast, Reagan, ever the optimist, offered a way out. It wasn't the American people who were to blame, he told voters. It was the government.
Okay.
Reagan would get it out of the
pause.
way.
Jesus.
He would lower taxes and cut.
All right, Matt, thoughts about how Reagan won because of his optimism?
I mean, that pretty much nailed it. I do know one thing about Carter's Malay speech was that number one on the charts was Blondie's Heart of Glass at the moment. So I think everyone is really going through a lot. And then was this when like there was like the anti-disco riots and stuff too? But
right around
yeah, and
then,
then
yeah.
also there might have been a little bit of foreign policy stuff going on that be interesting
right.
to see them summarize.
Well, because fundamentally Jimmy Carter had a pessimistic approach to the hostage negotiations. And Reagan saw more opportunity there.
Yeah, he seemed to be really optimistic as soon as he won.
Yeah, well, I mean, it helps you with nuclear war, as we learned previously on a post game, and optimism can help you through winning a presidency.
Also, I was born in '88, but my memory is that Reagan was pretty unpopular until he got shot in was that year 3? So I don't know. Let's see. I wonder how that's summarized in this part.
Red tape. He did both. The media dismissed his plan, calling it Reaganomics, but it worked. From 1982 to 87, the American economy, defined as GDP adjusted for inflation, rose an astonishing 27%, manufacturing 33%, and the median income by 12%. An estimated 20 million new jobs were created. All income classes and all racial and ethnic groups benefited from the Reagan economy. The dark decade of the 70s, a time in which it looked like America was in a terminal eclipse, faded away. It was, as Reagan put it during his 1984 re-election campaign, morning in America again. Every bit as transformational as his work on the economy was.
I feel like we should address the economic part first before the foreign policy part. I mean, like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it seems like what we just heard is like basically that belief that he did that and that those policies worked is what unites almost every segment of anyone who like considers themselves as part of like the right-wing establishment, right? Is belief in that. So if that doesn't stand up to scrutiny, then I mean, I know that, you know, trickle down economics doesn't work in the long run, but what do you make of of those claims of like how, like what was going on in the 80s, I guess, with like GDP and increased prosperity for everybody and all that stuff?
Well, I mean, one thing that I do just see on a quick Google result is the percentage of the total population below the poverty level increased from 13% in 1980 to 15.2% in 1983, and then declined back to 13% by 1988. So, you know, that doesn't sound like a sterling success to me. And certainly in terms of more long-term, you know, issues, I mean, I think that the overall, you know, the overall wealth gap, you know, increased a lot over the course of the 1980s. And, you know, probably most importantly, I mean, take us back to the first subject. I mean, this was a period of just massive defeat by organized labor, you know, that's not even reflected in that like poverty number, right? Because that's just the people at the very bottom, you know, but you know, in terms of the long-term, you know, trend line of economic inequality in the United States, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, the main stat that I feel like is easily cited here is wages to productivity.
Right.
And they're massively decoupled through this exact period of time. So like it's one way of saying like, okay, what they're measuring, maybe somehow that's like good for like, it's 27% up. The good number is 27% up, whatever that means to everyone. But if you actually look at like where that's going, it's to, you know, donor pockets and bankers and people like that. And like, it's this idea that anybody who's aware of who's alive now, this idea that we had a boom of manufacturing, like, well, it wasn't sustainable somehow. And like look at the world we've been left in. So like, I don't know. It's very hard because it's such a categorical statement that because it literally says all classes. It's like, okay, I don't think like I don't want to see the numbers. Prager, I'm sure it's a academic institution. I'm sure they cite their sources for all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just flatly not true, right? You know, that all classes, you know, benefited. I mean, we just got the numbers for you know, for people who are actually living, you know, below the poverty line. You know, we know that, you know, that real wages are stagnating, even as productivity is going up. I mean, you know, it's a great time to be rich, and I'm sure a good time, you know, to be even like a, you know, kind of upper middle income small business person or something like that, you know. But I mean, the all classes, you know, the all classes claim is just goofy.
And it's easy to be optimistic with all that cocaine that people were snorting back then.
Yeah, I mean, this is this is classic like progressive you know, economics 101, but just like looking at EPI, since 1979, average wage growth has just decelerated sharply, with the biggest declines in wage growth at the bottom and the middle. So literally since 1979, there's a sharp you know, I mean, they also just like they mentioned like the 27% for GDP, and then like I think it was like 13 for wages or something, and then they don't talk about like they don't account for inflation, which I'm not sure if it's at all maybe it's a small rise, but overall that's like a marked. It had been rising for like almost all of American history until then, so it's almost like the exact opposite story of what they're saying, right? So it's
Yeah, no question. It's also worth remembering that like Jimmy Carter's economic policies were not actually all that different, right? That they have that he was you know, he was somebody who was widely understood at the time. You know, I mean, like it's kind of funny because his post-presidency, you know, wouldn't really give you this impression, right? You know, but I mean, like he was widely understood at the time as a, you know, fiscally conservative Democrat, you know, like kind of the beginning in some ways of what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the whole like sell your peanut farm thing. It's like, dude, keep your fucking peanut farm. Sorry for swearing, but like,
No, you can do that.
like that's the whole thing. Is like, I feel like it was on American Prestige. They talked about like, the era of like pork barrel and like actually like doing each other favors in law. We gotta be okay with that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the very least, it's such a weird thing to focus on, right? I mean, like that. This is because, I mean, one, a lot of what's referred to as pork barrel spending is actually just like, you're finding ways to deliver for your constituents and
A bridge, yeah.
Like, and that's not like. I mean, obviously the devil's in the details, but like that's not a terrible thing in and of itself. But even to the extent that it is much more like, sordid and corrupt and like, and you're like, feeding kind of local donors in ways that don't benefit people that much or whatever. Okay, that is a little objectionable, but it's also like, honestly, in terms of like the old priority list, right? Like this should be nowhere near the top of it, right? I mean, like what do I like? Am I going to be happier if there's an expanded welfare state within which like a lot of like little contractors have like their hands out and like have and like find ways to benefit from it around the edges? Or am I going to be happier if we're doing like austerity, but like very honest, consistent austerity?
That's what I'm saying. And I feel like I'll get concerned with it when it reaches a level that I feel like is worse than a typical corporation. And before that, it's like, I mean, if you walked into some of these businesses in Manhattan, it's like the type of shit that must be writing off and like just decoration and stuff like that. It's like, this is ridiculous. Anyway,
yeah.
Let me get started.
His approach to foreign policy, specifically the Soviet Union. It's easy to forget, but when Reagan came to office in 1981, Soviet-style communism appeared to be as strong, if not stronger, than American-style democracy. Whereas Reagan's predecessor had taken a "we just need to get along" approach, Reagan saw it much differently. He didn't mince words. In March of 1983, he called the Soviet Union an evil empire. The media and Democrats wailed that the phrase was reckless, but it was typical Reagan. Simple, clear, and true. What else do you call a totalitarian system that had deprived millions of people across the globe of their freedom? When asked what his strategy was for fighting the Cold War, Reagan replied, "We win, they lose." It wasn't just a glib line. He meant it. He expanded the U.S. defense budget to unprecedented levels, in part to develop a ballistic missile shield his critics dubbed Star Wars. The strategy was to pressure the Soviets to try and keep up, which he knew they couldn't. He was right. They didn't have the money or the technology.
So we're just going to
Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev did
skip right
all
over
he could to pressure
the shield
Reagan.
not working.
Yeah, I wonder about that. Like, are they going to try to say it led to some future technology, or it's just no? It was awesome at the time.
I think he's saying it was like a bluff. Is basically what he's saying.
I guess it doesn't matter, right? Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Growing up, I was so excited that when I grow up, I could be flying an X-wing with a lightsaber and taking on the dirty commies. I was very disappointed that the Star Wars program was not what I thought it was.
All right, should we finish it up?
Yeah.
Drop it. But he would not budge. To drive home his point, Reagan went to the Berlin Wall, a symbol of communist oppression, and delivered one of his most famous lines, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." By the end of the decade, a year after Reagan left office, the Soviet Union collapsed, an outcome no one could have imagined, except possibly Reagan himself. There are many reasons why this happened, but no one played a bigger role than our 40th president. We won, they lost. Before the Reagan era, Americans were depressed and uncertain. By the end of it, they were optimistic and confident. Reagan had stuck to his formula: lower taxes, less government, strong defense. It worked, and it still does today. I'm Scott Walker, president of Young America's Foundation and former governor of Wisconsin for Prager University.
Oh, dear God, that was awful. The second time through.
Yeah. More government, less defense.
Well,
Sorry,
No.
sorry. Less government, more defense.
That's what I was. Yeah, but go for it, Andy. Yeah.
Oh no, I had pulled out this great history book called The Art of Engagement. If you can find a copy, it is well worth it. It's expensive as hell because it's like a it's a gallery book of a show turned into a textbook that's being used. But the 1984, Enrique Chagoya had a piece called "Their Freedom of Expression: The Economic Recovery of Their Economy," which is a painting of Ronald Reagan dressed as Mickey Mouse with the ears, painting in blood, rescuing Cubans out of Central America. And then in the corner, there's a little Kissinger, also dressed as Mickey Mouse, writing, "By the way, keep art out of politics." So like, yeah, he was popular, and we all know where the foreign policy kind of led to a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it is maybe worth taking. I mean, it's a pretty obvious point, but it is maybe worth taking 10 seconds to just say that, like, that little recitation of the Reagan foreign policy leaves out Iran, the Contras, which to
They had an affair too, right? The Irans and the Contras.
yeah. And since that's like a word that doesn't necessarily like have that much of an echo anymore, like it's sort of like vague 80s retro stuff. Like, let's keep in mind, we talk about the Contras, what we're specifically talking about are like death squad, like paramilitaries who are fighting to overthrow a government that actually in 1984, was certified by, globally certified multi-party election, that who would rape and torture nuns, bomb, what are referred to as soft targets, which could be like schools.
This is why you come to the post game. Just it's like fun, loose. But I think it was interesting to watch this.
Also, Saddam Hussein and the proto-Taliban, also Reagan success stories in the 80s. But go on.
No. I was just saying that this is so foundational to what Republicans believe. While some of the other Prager stuff seems a little bit more like side quests, or like this is it.
That's the interesting part, actually. Like it's so pro-war, and I feel like Prager, they have this libertarian anti-war dance.
That's true.
And like the Russia invasion, really, I think you saw a lot of different flittering about. Candace Owens taking a certain attack and Ben Shapiro taking another. It's interesting to how they are going to try to cohere around simultaneously saying, yeah, we don't like wars because Trump said Iraq was a big fat mistake, so like that's canon now, but also like, no, we need to support more missiles because the GI Joes are awesome and they protect us. And
missiles or like the defense budget doesn't go to government, right? Like, is that the line? Like, is that it's not government because it's just the military, and the military isn't government? Because he just said it straight up.
One of the scary things I feel about the right is they're getting okay with saying that. They like don't care about squaring that contradiction anymore. Like, yeah, we like cops and we like the military, and that's it, and that's all we want.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's coherent. You technically can say that, right? Like, I think money for cops is good, and money for social programs is bad, and cops aren't bureaucracy.
Which is funny because I remember way the hell back in was like 2008 sitting in on my friend Robin's when Matt was 10 years old, Jesus, sorry, 20 years old. I wasn't born yet, but yeah, that's right. So sitting in my friend Robin's intro to philosophy class, she was like a grad student, as I was at that time, and there's this thing that like we talked about when we watched that clip of Shapiro and Peterson talking about why they believed in God. Like there's this thing that like a good intro to philosophy professor will do, and I'm sure Robin would do today, right? Where a student says something just totally nonsensical, and you find a way to like translate it into something that makes enough sense that you could respond to. And she definitely was not comfortable doing that yet. So I remember there's this student in the class who just did this like minute of, babble that, actually would have been pretty reminiscent of what Peterson says in that clip if I'd seen it then. And I remember Robin just had no idea what to do with it. And she was just like, well, that's a thing you could say.
You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive post-games on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.